The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Sunshine and lollipops. And we're not talking about the weather, which has finally turned after a week of rain. There is sun streaming in our windows here on Jennifer Street in beautiful Washington, D.C. in the Friendship Heights area. Feeling good about the weekend. No. Sunshine and lollipops coming from Ashburn. And yes, we've heard about culture change before. Ron Rivera used to puff out his chest and say how he changed the culture. He really didn't, and it was impossible during the Dan Snyder years. But there's a real sunny vibe coming out now, and went through some of the comments that the players have made as OTAs have been open this week, off-season workouts, and everybody saying the right things, and I believe it this time. I really feel good about what Terry McLaurin has to say. We'll get to his comments in the 10 o'clock hour. Also, Sam Cosmi has been here for a while, veteran, and has seen all the Michigas that's gone on. He said it's a fresh start. It's like having a new team, and that's really what they needed. And I think that had a lot to do with what they did. In fact, I heard a very bizarre theory yesterday on why a particular draft expert, I don't remember his name, but I think he works for CBS, why he thinks that the Commanders are going to take Drake May. And he said it's because Sam Howell was traded to Seattle and they wanted to avoid an uncomfortable situation where Howell is the incumbent starter and coming in to take his place is Drake May, who had been Howell's backup at North Carolina. I mean, it's an interesting theory. I don't buy it, but maybe there is something to that. We'll see. We'll see in a few weeks. Again, we're going to have Mel Kiper on next Tuesday. Mel is very bullish on Daniels. He believes that the Commanders are going to take Jaden Daniels number 2 and says that Drake May is a long way from being ready. But, stranger things have happened, and Jason Lockenfora, whose opinion I really respect about the NFL, he's got a story today where he says he believes J.J. McCarthy is going to go number 2 to Washington. But we got a few more weeks to speculate about all that, and a lot to look forward to this weekend. And I have been watching the NCAA tournament probably since 1971. I can't really remember 1970, but 71, I remember seeing Howard Porter and Villanova playing UCLA for what was their 5th straight championship. I think it was number 5 in a row. It was the year before Bill Walton became the center. So in those days, freshmen were ineligible to play. So Walton was a freshman at UCLA, and I forget the name of the center, but they had some good players like Sidney Wicks was on that team, Curtis Rowe, and they won the championship. They beat Porter's team, and in fact, it was later revealed that Porter had taken money from an agent, and their spot in the runner-up role was vacated years later, if that means anything. But I do remember that. So I'm going back well over 50 years on this. The women's tournament, they didn't even have a women's tournament then. They had something called AIAW, and we did not have women competing for an NCAA championship in basketball, believe it or not, in my lifetime. And this year, for the first time, again, I've been watching this tournament for over 50 years. For the first time, I am looking forward to a women's Final Four game more so than I am the men this weekend. Men will be great. I'll watch every minute of both games, Purdue and North Carolina State, 6 o'clock tomorrow, followed by UConn and Alabama. I'm fully expecting the top seeds to advance, and we'll have this interesting big man matchup on Monday night. But of the 4 games between the women's Final Four and the men's Final Four, the one I'm looking forward to the most is the one I'm really concerned about being able to stay up for. Maybe I have to plot out a nap this afternoon because I really would like to see Iowa and UConn play, and it's probably not going to tip until at least 9:30, maybe later than that if the South Carolina-NC State game goes longer. And look, NC State may win the whole thing on Sunday. But this semifinal game where you have stars, you have the two of the biggest marquee stars in college basketball. We just saw Angel Reese go out to Caitlin Clark. Now Caitlin Clark is going to play Paige Beckers. And by the way, Beckers was Caitlin Clark before Clark. Beckers, unfortunately, has had to deal with some pretty serious injuries, including a knee injury, which knocked out all of last season. She's back. She's playing well, and I am looking forward to seeing that game tonight. And I cannot say that I've ever really looked forward to watching a women's game of any kind, whether it was a championship game, a Final Four game, or a regular season game. Now, there was a lot of hype. It's going back well over 20 years when Connecticut was emerging as a powerhouse under Gino Auriemma, and they played Tennessee. And Rebecca Lobo was the best-known basketball player in the country. I don't think Shamika Coldslaw was there yet. She may have been, but that was a huge game. They played it, I believe it was on Martin Luther King's birthday, and so they had the stage all to themselves on ESPN, and that was a hype game. And that was like really the beginning of the rivalry between Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma. But that was coaches, and that was typical of college basketball over the years, that, hey, it's Jim Boeheim going up against Mike Krzyzewski, or it's Gary Williams against Mike Krzyzewski. We concentrated on the coaches more so than the players. The players changed, the coaches stayed the same. Even though Gino Auriemma is there, we're not really talking about him tonight. And Lisa Bluter, she's like new money. She's been at Iowa for 24 years, but nobody paid any attention to her until she recruited and successfully landed Caitlin Clark. And that's what we have tonight. We have the Clark-Beckers matchup, which makes this so intriguing. And here's some examples of how the women's game has really vaulted forward in a very short period of time. Now, keep in mind, the men are playing in Glendale. They're playing where the Arizona Cardinals play, so that seats 70,000 people. So the ticket demand is a little bit different. The women are playing at the arena where the Cavaliers play in Cleveland tonight. The cheapest ticket for the game is $966. The average ticket costs about $2,700, and the best seat in the house is selling for $11,000. $11,000 to see a women's college basketball game tonight. The average men's ticket is about $1,000, but again, you're talking about a 70,000-seat stadium. In the story for the AP today, coverage of women's basketball has surged in recent years, and ticket prices have followed. The average cost of a women's Final Four ticket went from $216 in 2022 to $416 in 2023, and now we're talking about $1,000. And to give you an idea of how little time has passed since the average ticket went for $216, Caitlin Clark was a freshman. Okay, she was playing college basketball when a ticket was about a fifth of what it is now, and the television number off the charts for this game the other night, Monday night, where you had 12.3 million people watching Iowa and LSU play. Only one men's tournament game, the one between NC State and Duke, drew more this year. Only one. So they're right there with the men in terms of television viewership. Will it sustain when Caitlin Clark goes to the WNBA? Who knows? There needs to be another transcendent star, although Juju Watkins, a freshman at USC, she's coming back, and maybe there's going to be the Beckers-Watkins matchup in years to come. Caesars Sportsbook said the men's Final Four received 15 to 20 times as many bets as the women's event in 2019. This year, the ratio is 2-1. 2-1, men to women. Just absolutely incredible. So really looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing what UConn can do. The men as well as the women. Wouldn't be great if one is playing for the championship on Sunday night, the UConn women, and the men would be playing on Monday night. But a lot has to happen between now and then. The biggest story right now around Connecticut is, will they be distracted by a delayed flight? Because they've been blitzing through this tournament. They won every game by 13 points or more. And Danny Hurley had his news conference yesterday. They held it later in the day because the flight that was supposed to take off from Hartford at 6 o'clock didn't go until like 1:30 in the morning, and they didn't get into Phoenix until 3:30 in the morning their time, 6:30 in the morning our time. And so naturally, when Hurley had his news conference yesterday, this was the first question.
Dana O'Neill at The Athletic. Dan, how was your flight?
It was not, you know what, it was nice. You know what, it's like, I've had a lot of thoughts, because I've had a lot of time to think, just in a stationary situation. But it's like, I think what goes through your mind once you're done, kind of complaining and cursing and muttering and trying to, you just start saying to yourself, like you don't really deserve to show entitlement. It's such an honor to get a chance to, and a once-in-a-lifetime experience to go play in a Final Four, coach in a Final Four, that, it just, once kind of that edge wore off, you start, lucky to be here. We're lucky to get an opportunity to come play in the Final Four. And then who doesn't deal with problems with the airlines? I mean, people deal with it during the holidays, and it's just, it's something that you just got to get through, but it sucked.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised about that. I thought he might invent a slight. Oh, yeah, they don't want Connecticut to win, so there's some hanky-panky going on with the airlines. Man, that's the Jordan way. Invent slights. He didn't do that. He had great perspective. Everybody has trouble traveling, especially during the holidays, so we'll just deal. And here's how he dealt with the time.
I had my head in my hands a lot. I know Andrea storied that pose yesterday. Because the toughest part, we got a chance to go home, which was nice. So we sent the guys back to campus, because then we were going to leave at 11:30. But then that it was a real mindful exercise from 11:30 to like 1:45 on the tarmac. It was therapeutic to watch the de-icing out the window. That was probably the best part of it.
Therapeutic to watch the de-icing. I'm not sure they were de-icing, because I don't think it was that. I think it was just mechanical stuff with the plane. But yeah, they got kind of a laugh there at the news conference. As far as getting his team up to play with the way that they've been cruising through the tournament, and maybe inventing something that the world's against us and we got to overcome that. He's not really looking at it that way. He thinks he's got their attention with the way that Alabama has played so far.
With what Alabama's shown in terms of what they're capable of to beat a number 1 seed in North Carolina, and just with how good their offense is. I mean, it's it'll be the best offense that we've guarded, this year. As good as Illinois was, this is better. Just because I think they're deeper. Just more athletics, just more guards that can break you down, and then look at we've lost 3 games. I mean, we got crushed at Creighton, and at Seton Hall we got our butt kicked too. So if we're not on our identity, like we're vulnerable like everybody else. But again, if we play elite offense, elite defense, and beat you on the backboard, we're tough to beat.
All right. Now, the last thing is about the history that they're trying to make, what Danny Hurley and Connecticut are trying to do. Since UCLA made it 7 straight in 1973 in that incredible final game where Bill Walton was 21 of 22 and he had 44 points, since they made it 7 straight, only 2 teams have won back-to-back championships. One was the Duke team, 91-92, where just about everybody came back with Grant Hill and Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner, that gang. They repeated in 92, and then the Florida team from 2007 under Billy Donovan, who was able to keep future pros together. In those days, there wasn't NIL to keep you rich while you were in school, and he managed to get the whole crew back to win again in 2007 after winning in 2006. So that's why Danny Hurley, in getting his team ready for this season, leaned on the coach of Florida, Billy Donovan, for advice.
Billy Donovan, I got talking to him immediately, really a week after the season ended last year, and I kind of hit that emotional crash when it's over and it doesn't feel like maybe what you thought it would, in terms of that sustained euphoria kind of disappeared quickly. So we talked a lot about that and just the emotions of it all, and then then the mindset with the team. The difference is I had a whole new team basically. Coach K and Billy Donovan, the last 2 coaches to do it, they returned pretty much intact, an entire dominant team. And we've done this while losing 5 of our top 7 or whatever it was scorers, and only taking one in the portal. So doing it through player development and doing it through trusting freshmen and strategic portal. So it was different. And I'd say that we did talk about reigning and defending more than I was told to. Because and actually what we talked a lot about with Tristan, Donovan, and AK Caravan was like, you guys got a chance to make history at a place that is impossible to make history. And that was probably what we leaned into a lot with that returning core that could have been complacent because, been there, done that. Final Four, national championships, I did it already. Why do I got to push so hard? Well, you got a chance to make history in a place that is impossible to make history.
AK being Alex Caravan, a star forward for Connecticut. They talked to, in the Associated Press, Mark Long's got a story here, talking to Billy Donovan about this, and some of the comments very interesting in comparing what Florida did in 2007 and what UConn is attempting to do this weekend. This is what Donovan says. He says, certainly a different time with the way college basketball has changed. The Huskies obviously had to change their starting lineup. It's not the same exact team that won last year. They've certainly got some pieces from the previous year, but they're also starting 2 or 3 different guys as well. In fact, Connecticut lost its top 2 scorers from last season. So imagine that, imagine Grant Hill and Christian Laettner leaving Duke and trying to repeat. But it is a different era with the transfer portal, so that has changed things a lot. But they did lose their top 2 scorers from last year, but you can fill in. And you got a starter from Loyola, Maryland. How about that? I mean, at this level, this never used to happen either. Cam Spencer played there before, and also he played at Rutgers. And Jordan Hawkins. So he comes in, and they have been great this year. They've won 11 in a row, 25 of 26 going into tomorrow night's matchup. They won their tournament games by an average of 28 points, the 4 of them. And this is what Lee Humphrey says. Humphrey was on that Florida team that repeated in 2007. He says, if I wasn't picking with my heart, I would have picked them to win the whole thing in my bracket. I couldn't pull for them since we're the last team to repeat, but it's going to be tough for anybody to knock them off. And just to show you how tough this has been to go back-to-back, before Florida did it in 2007, Michigan State, here it is. The UConn is the first champion to get to the Final Four since Florida. So in other words, since Florida won in 2007, there hasn't been a team until now, Connecticut, even to get to the Final Four. And before that, it was Michigan State in 2001. They didn't win it. That was the year that Duke won. Kentucky, 1997. They did not win. Arkansas, 1995. And Duke, 92. And Florida and Duke were the only ones that were able to repeat. Al Horford, who also played on that Florida team, he said, the second time I feel like it's tougher. He says, for the Huskies, they've kind of cruised through it seems like. For us personally, the second time was much tougher. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation, and yeah, it was definitely more challenging. Donovan went to great lengths to keep his guys on edge after Horford, Joakim Noah, and Corey Brewer delayed NBA money to stay in school and attempt a rare repeat alongside fellow starters Torian Green and Lee Humphrey. The coach scheduled several sports celebrities to speak to the team, including NBA legend Jerry West, New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick, and St. Louis Cardinals manager Tony La Russa. His players remember one motivational tactic before all others. Donovan showed up in the locker room wearing a police uniform minutes before a game at Auburn. Donovan insists he just wore a hat, but players remember a jacket, badge, baton, and handcuffs. Regardless, the message was clear. Officer Bill wanted the Gators to be like police breaking up a party. The team responded, with a resounding victory. And so, look, this is new territory here. Even though they're trying to do what 2 teams have done since UCLA did it 51 years ago, going back to back, they're doing it with a different group of players. There's a couple of holdovers there. But this will be a different type of repeat if they can get it done. And looking forward to seeing it. Coming up, get to some football. What Sean Salisbury says about the Stefon Diggs trade. Very interesting perspective from Sean as we look at Diggs digging his way out of Buffalo and now playing with the Houston Texans with a real interesting little contract maneuver here. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I got Tony coming up on a sunny Friday as we head towards the Final Four tonight for the women and the men tomorrow, and very exciting time of the year. I did want to mention this. I watched last night the NIT final, and, well, there's good and bad from it. The good was it's a great game. The bad is these two teams clearly should have been in the NCAA tournament. Seton Hall had 25 wins, and Indiana State, which had the most interesting player in the country, they had 32 wins this year. And it came down to the end. They were, going back and forth on runs. I think Seton Hall went up by 9. Indiana State went ahead. Indiana State looked like they had a chance to close out the game up 77-70, but then Seton Hall scored the last 9 points of the game and won it 79-77, and it was great. The downside is it's going to fuel those people who say, "Hey, got to expand the tournament. Hey, got to have another weekend. Double the number of teams." I think that'd be awful. Jim Boeheim's got a suggestion about it. We'll get to that at 10 o'clock. He wants to expand. But these were two great teams. These teams would have been interesting to see in the NCAA tournament, but they put on a show. And I think they had the NIT in Vegas last year, which really upset the traditionalists who remember it at Madison Square Garden all those years. And now they have it at Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is where they had Hoosiers. And one of the things that they did last night was they brought some of the people who were in the movie, including Maris Valanis, who played Jimmy Chitwood in their Hickory High jackets. That was a nice touch. I think that's probably the place for it from now on if they can't have it at the Garden. But it turned out to be a terrific game, and there will lead people to say, well, look at what happened in the NIT final and how good these two teams were and how egregious it was to leave them out. And the most interesting player is Robbie Avila. If you haven't seen him, he wears these goggle glasses. He's got a dad bod, but he is an excellent passer and can shoot. Watching the end of the game, I think he really hurt them because he jacked up 3, I think, ill-advised threes. Didn't score a point in the final 11 and a half minutes of the game, but did score 13 points, had 5 assists and 5 rebounds. Looked like he had more than 5 assists because he had some terrific passes. But he's got a bunch of nicknames. They call him Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Milk Chamberlain, whatever. But there was a nice scene at the end of the game where Shaheen Holloway, who's done a really nice job at Seton Hall, he took which was it? The Peacocks, whatever the team was. He took them deep in the tournament a couple of years ago, and then replaced the coach when he came here. But anyway, Robbie Avila was seen, leaning over, very disappointed in what had happened, and Shaheen Holloway comes over to him and puts his finger underneath Avila's chin and picks it up and gives him some words of encouragement, and then they hugged. And that was nice. That was a really nice moment. So good NIT final, and bad on the NCAA, which will probably use that as fuel to expand the big tournament. But it is what it is. A little football here. And when I heard yesterday that Stefon Diggs, or day before, I guess, Stefon Diggs had been traded from Buffalo to Houston, this looked like a move for the future for Houston. And it is, but only the immediate future, because what's being reported by Adam Schefter is in making the deal happen, the Texans agreed to make Diggs a free agent after this season. Had 3 years left on the deal, and they said, okay, we'll take the guarantee for next season, $3.5 million. He'll be assured of $22.5 million in guaranteed money, and then he can become a free agent. Now, his production is starting to drop off. He is 30 years old, but on the open market, if he has a decent year, he will be in demand and can make plenty of money on a short deal, like a 2 or 3 year deal. And you wonder about a team like Houston. Are they using this to go for it now? They think, with a second-year quarterback in C.J. Stroud, not that you can't win a Super Bowl with a second-year quarterback, see Tom Brady, but that they think that they're going to go for it this year. And if they see enough out of Diggs and he likes it there and he's won a Super Bowl, they think they can re-sign him. Maybe that went into it. But you also have, this is, as Terry McLaurin is the antithesis of a diva receiver, Diggs is like an old school diva guy. And the question is, can you fit him into what you do? And it sounds simple. Oh, yeah, he's a great receiver. Who wouldn't want to have him? Well, Sean Salisbury played in the NFL, worked a long time with ESPN. He lives in Houston, does talk radio in Houston, on with Dan Patrick yesterday with this warning on Stefon Diggs.
If you have a strong personality as a wide receiver, I played with Chris Carter. He was a strong personality, and he wanted the ball, and rightfully so. He's in the Hall of Fame. But he still had to fit in with the Jake Reeds, and we had Anthony Carter, and we had Herschel Walker, and we had Robert Smith. So, and with Warren Moon and Jim McMahon at quarterback, you had an opportunity to kind of respect that position and knew where you were, still found a way to get him the ball. But it's going to take incumbent upon C.J. Stroud and them not to fit into to Stefon Diggs. It's just Stefon Diggs to fit in with what they're doing. But it is easy to get to a point where you say, I got to get him involved. I don't want him to be a malcontent. And then it changes the way you go about being honest and reading the defense. And Dan, I'm going to tell you, it's not now. It's not in training camp. It's not in OTAs or mini camp or in August. The real test is going to be when Nico Collins has 9 catches for $150 and 2 touchdowns. And in game 3, Stefon Diggs catches 2 balls for 28 yards and the Texans win. That's when you're going to find out, where's the headache? Is it a migraine or is it just a little nag because it's hanging around and a Tylenol will fix it? This is a tremendous upgrade if, in fact, Stefon Diggs goes back to the way he was when he came into this league and had something to prove. And he does have something to prove. And I just think the bandwidth of this offense going into a game is huge. But there is still that if. And if you have too many ifs on a team, it becomes a problem. I think with Ryans and C.J. Stroud, and I think he's at a slippery slope in his career as Stefon Diggs to get to the level that he wants to be. But it can't just be about his numbers. It's got to be about what's really getting yours, and that's putting a ring on your finger in the process, because Nico Collins and Tank Dell are both really good players. But trying to defend this offense now, I think it's one of the 3 or 4, or I might be cheating them out of a slot or 2, most explosive offenses, at least on paper, if things work out in the league. Because remember, Dan, Mixon's as good as we have coming out of the backfield, like a McCaffrey catching the football in space. How are you going to defend them all if they're healthy and a little bit lucky with attitude?
Okay. So, yeah, there's some concerns there. And obviously, Buffalo had to get rid of him because they're taking on a dead money charge of $31 million just to get him out the door. And if he's still one of the premier receivers of the league, he's obviously a bigger problem off the field, and a problem so big that even when they're in that window where they may be able to knock off Kansas City finally, they trade away one of these guys. Tells you something. Some more football, and this is all a really good vibe coming out of Ashburn these days. Not surprising. I think under new ownership, almost any coach, this is not to downgrade Dan Quinn in any way, but in the new world in Ashburn where Dan Snyder no longer roams the earth, it's a whole different ball game. And Dan Quinn, on top of being a good coach, having taken a team to a Super Bowl, also has this way, and I heard this from my nephew, who was an assistant trainer with the Falcons when Quinn was there, of leading men, getting guys to follow you along. And this is Tress Way, who's the longest tenured member of the team. He's been here for 10 years. He's seen it all. He's seen every coach come and go, I guess, since Mike Shanahan. I don't even know if he may have even played for Shanahan for a year. I'm not sure. But this is Tress Way on how things got started with the OTAs this week in Ashburn.
DQ hit us right out the gate. This period is about getting to know each other and compete. And he said something that I thought was awesome. He's like, he made us all, he said, if you were here last year, stand up, move around, different seats, get to know guys. And he's like, man, those of you that have been through this before, you know how it goes. In 6 weeks, some of these dudes that you're meeting for the first time will turn into some of your best buds. And that's so true. Nobody's just ever said it just flat out like that. And I just love I love that mindset. I got a couple guys next to me that I've never played with in the locker room, getting to chat with them every single day, getting it all mixed up with different guys in the workouts, and then starting to ramp up competition stuff. So it's very, very cool, like clear mindset of what this period is.
Tress way on his way to a big media career in Washington. It's pretty clear about that. He's always good with the media. This is about the new coaching staff, and as part of the staff, Larry Izzo is the new special teams coach, which has got Tress Way really excited.
As a specialist and a dude, like my life is special teams. I mean, I'm playing for a coach who was and like is a playing legend. And so our first interaction, I get into his office and I'm talking within 20 seconds, we're on the whiteboard and I'm just talking about little things and schemes with the punt team and coverage and like things like that. And it is just, I mean, it's awesome. Like I can't wait for our special teams meetings to start firing up, and that's such a cool. Just being a veteran player and like you get to be around different coaches. It's so fun watching guys, and especially the success that he has had. Where those Seattle special teams units, I mean, you could track back to ever since I've been in the league since my rookie year. Those Seattle special teams units, they just hunt, and so as a punter, you love having your dudes who want to go hunt, and especially a coach that is pushing them to go hunt and who used to hunt in his own day. So that is definitely exciting to be playing with him for sure.
And Izzo's from this area. I think he's from Northern Virginia and maybe old enough to understand the special teams tradition here. George Allen hired the first special teams coach in NFL history, and he did it when he was with the Los Angeles Rams. And the coach that he hired was Dick Vermeil. Dick Vermeil went to become head coach at UCLA. I'm not sure who Allen's special teams coach was his last year with the Rams, but he got fired after the 1970 season, even though he had a good season. The owner just didn't like him. Winds up here in 1971, and he hired Marv Levy. Marv Levy was the first special teams coach in Redskins history. And, you know, you think about the emphasis that Allen put on special teams. It changed the NFL in many ways. And pre-salary cap days, he was keeping some pretty experienced veterans around as special teamers. You can't really do that anymore. But they've got a guy who's had success as both a special teams player and a special teams coach in Larry Izzo. So that's a good thing. More sunshine. Sam Cosmi, he's been here for a while, 4 or 5 years, coming out of Texas, and he's seen the churn and the burn and not necessarily seen change here. Now he's seen a big offseason change and looks at it this way.
You know, it's kind of like some people would say, it's like you kind of went to a new team. That's the feel right now. Knew everything. I mean, we just had our new owner last year and new head coach. Half the locker room is basically new. It's like I said, it's like you went to a new team. So, you know, it's definitely a breath of fresh air, if I would say. Just to be able to be around guys and new faces and doing all that and building those relationships. Like I said, I'm really excited, very optimistic about this year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Breath of fresh air. That's not to say that Ron Rivera did such a terrible job trying to create a culture here. But now you're seeing the difference. You've got a real general manager, you got a real head coach, and all new faces. And look, from a team that won 4 games last year, you can understand how Cosmi feels. The guys we had weren't good enough, so we need new players in here. And they're loaded up on draft picks, too, 6 picks in the top 100. So you're going to see a lot of different faces when the final roster comes out to 53. The last thing is more on Dan Quinn. Here's another vote of confidence. This is Cosmi on what he's noticed about Quinn so far.
You could tell he just wants to put together a special culture when it comes to the group of guys. You know, he's definitely trying to do it right. He's focusing on the relationships, and then obviously we're getting to the football stuff. We just started OTAs, but being able to build that is I could just already tell it's going to be huge for the team. And just like I said, the limited times I've got to interact with him, I mean, he's a really cool guy. Seems very personable. And I'm very happy that he's our head coach for sure.
Seems to be across the board, that feeling. Coming up, Terry McLaurin, a mensch among mensches, what he says about the new regime at Ashburn and how he expects to fit in with it. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's coming up at 11, but before that, we'll hear what he had to say last night with Pablo Torre about the sweat stains controversy going on in baseball. They got new uniforms, and it's a really bad look, especially on the road in those gray uniforms. So they had some fun with that. And we'll get to that later this hour. Also got Terry McLaurin's comments from OTAs the other day, and I love listening to him. In fact, if I ever talk to him, I'm going to try and convince him to run for mayor someday. Never mind football. He's just got a great presence about him, and really has a good grip on things. And when reporters want to know what's going on, they go to Terry McLaurin. He's won the Media Good Guy Award like every year he's been here, and he gives smart, thoughtful answers on just about everything. And one of the things he talked about is how he expects to help mentor whoever they bring in at quarterback. And I'll get to that in a second. But Phil Mushnick, who's been writing a sports media column in New York at the New York Post for over 40 years. And, whew, man, when he wants to bring it, he brings it. He doesn't hold back. High heat. So he's today attacking Kim Mulkey, the coach of LSU, her team getting eliminated the other night against Iowa. And you remember she made all this news last week when she attacked the Washington Post about an article that she anticipated coming out. It came out on Saturday, and she got all worked up about it. Turned out to be a nothing burger, and she got mad at the LA Times, and the LA Times actually responded and removed some of what the writer had written. But Mushnick does not like Kim Mulkey and writes today, Kim Mulkey, the often repugnant, clown-outfitted, attention-starved, raging, sideline-stomping coach of LSU women's basketball, recently made low comedy when she threatened to sue the Washington Post for casting her in a poor light, a threat made entirely on what she anticipated reading. Good guess, Coach. What makes this comical is that whatever ill might have been written of Kim Mulkey, the primary source of the info is, ta-da, Kim Mulkey. And he's angry. You know, I don't get as angry about this as he does. I think if you have a really good team and your players are playing hard, I don't think there's really such thing as running up the score, especially if you make substitutions. Now he has been critical of Mulkey and Gino Auriemma and others of not playing the backups in these blowout games, but she talked about her run at Baylor and some of the games she had during the 2019-2020 season. 97-29 against New Hampshire, 120-46 against Grambling, 112-42 over Houston Baptist, 90-28 over Lamar, and 111-43 against Arkansas State. I would say it's not even buyer beware. It's acceptor beware. These are guaranteed games. These teams come in and they play these high-level teams, and you want to air it out. You want to get your team confident and so forth. I don't have as much of a problem as Mushnick does with Mulkey, but he calls her Attila the Hun spelled H-O-N. Yeah, a little bit sexist there. It takes her to task for saying it was nothing intentional, that her team wasn't out there for the national anthem. Her teams, he says, often practice rude disregard for the pregame anthem since Brittany Griner, now repatriated from a Russian prison, played for Mulkey at Baylor. And he writes, as a disciplinarian, Mulkey seems as temper tantrum prone as her players. In the win over UCLA prior to the Iowa game, star Angel Reese, a transfer from Maryland, despite evidence of an inability to write a cogent sentence as a public reply to a question on Instagram, fouled out late, then headed off, but stopped to badmouth the UCLA coach. Yep, in a close tournament game, she risked a technical. You can criticize her for that. I think writing on Instagram, I don't think you question the grammar there. That's kind of what people do there. I don't think that was a big deal. But, he clearly does not like Kim Mulkey. And, I thought the whole thing that she did in attacking Kent Babb in the Washington Post was a bunch of nonsense, and the article turned out to be just an interesting profile. The one thing you could say is maybe she's homophobic. There's evidence of that, but there's evidence of players saying, no, I played for her, she's not. So who knows? But it was much to do about nothing, really, as it turned out. And if she still had the stage now, if her team had beaten Iowa, maybe we're still playing this out on the stage as we get ready for the Final Four tonight. Terry McLaurin talking to the media this week. Off-season workouts started on Tuesday, and he says he doesn't know who they're going to take at quarterback, and the debate goes on. As I mentioned, I'm going to have Mel Kiper on Tuesday. I talked to Mel a couple days ago. He firmly believes that Jaden Daniels will be the number 2 pick of the draft, and he will go to Washington. There are others who believe that Drake May will go number 2, and I even heard an analyst yesterday throw this out, that the reason that they traded Sam Howell to Seattle is they didn't want to create an uncomfortable situation for May when he came to camp and would be playing ahead of the quarterback that he played behind at North Carolina, and a quarterback who's made the last 18 consecutive starts for the Commanders. That's good. That'll be a good trivia question when we start next year. Who was the last quarterback prior to Sam Howell to start a game? Was Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz started that Cleveland game and was terrible, and that's why they decided that they were going to take a shot, just to see what they had with Howell, and they propped them up in the offseason because they weren't going to spend any money on a quarterback. That was what that was all about. So they had Rivera propping him up as maybe he can be the answer. He was not. He's gone. So you can believe that if you want. Also, you have Jason Lockenfora in his column today in the Post on the NFL. He, like most, believed that Caleb Williams will go number 1 to Chicago, but he says J.J. McCarthy would be the pick for Washington. And this is his logic. He says, sometimes the betting markets reveal impending reality, and I am inclined to believe there is merit to the Michigan Stars' rising odds to go 2nd overall. McCarthy being a top 5 pick shouldn't come as a shock if you've been reading along, even with his opportunities limited by Michigan riding its running game, and his maturity, coachability, and overall quality are shining through in this staged environment of scripted spring showcases. When I asked the second evaluator, I guess he talked to a couple of evaluators, for comparisons for the top 4 quarterbacks, he said this about McCarthy. Looks like another Brock Purdy to me. Commanders GM Adam Peters was part of the brain trust that took Purdy in San Francisco, although that was in the final round. Some have used Kirk Cousins, who 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan helped draft, champion in Washington, as a comparison. He's the kind of point guard who really fits that offense, the first evaluator said of McCarthy, noting that Peters also was a staunch supporter of trading for the less polished but more athletic Trey Lance with the 49ers, a transaction that failed miserably. One agent who got to know the most of the leading men in this class as he recruited them, but does not represent McCarthy, said his maturity is off the charts. Owners will fall in love with him. And this from a GM who is at Michigan's pro day but does not anticipate being in position to take the quarterback this high. He kind of blew me away. I really wasn't expecting it. It was an elite performance. So take that with a grain of salt. I also don't necessarily buy into this thing like, oh, he looks like the quarterback we used to have. Remember, Dan Quinn did not win a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan, and the two of them were working together, did not win a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy has not won a Super Bowl. Not that he won't. Not that that can't happen. Maybe even Kirk Cousins could still win one. But I think you don't always put 1 and 1 together and get 2 in these kind of things. So, you can make an argument for just about anybody. That's an interesting argument for J.J. McCarthy. I'm not necessarily buying it. I'm riding with Mel. I always ride with Mel. I think that they're going to take Jaden Daniels. But whoever it is, Terry McLaurin is ready to lend a hand, as he told reporters the other day.
I think where we're at in the draft, obviously we'll get the chance if they choose quarterback, we'll get one of the elite guys. So I'm just looking forward to whoever they bring in, kind of help bringing them along. Going into my 6th year, I kind of know the lay of the land and everything, and anything that I can do to help them become acclimated and be a part of our team, I'm going to try to do that. So obviously I don't know. They don't ask me, but my job is when they get here to kind of help bring them along as much as I can because, we'll go as far as the quarterback goes.
Okay. Now he is, I think, if I'm right here, he's learning his 5th different offense, right? He was drafted in 2019. So he had a new offense last year, a new offense 2 years prior to that, as Norv Turner's kid was running the offense for a while. So it's a new offense, but he's been through this so many times. He's not going to try and tell you this is harder than he really thinks it is. I mean, he seems to have a good handle, having worked with so many different offensive coordinators, and is now ready to work for another one.
It's definitely, an adjustment, obviously, when you're learning a new offense. And it's kind of the same mentality I take into last year and years past, where you kind of just want to take a day one approach. You kind of erase what you've learned in the past. But at the end of the day, I think schemes in the NFL are relatively similar. It's just the names and the formations that may be a little different. So just getting used to the terminology, and Cliff's offense is just going to be something that's an adjustment for all of us. But the good thing about it is I got some good time on my hands to really put some work in studying when I leave this place. So I could come in here when we have walkthroughs, and when we start to put our helmets on, we can really hit the ground running. So far it's we haven't learned anything yet, but my approach is the same. Try to take good notes in there, ask good questions, and then study on my own at night.
Who wouldn't want to have a kid like that in class, right? He's terrific. As far as the new culture, and he's been through these before, right? I mean, this is now the third different head coach that he'll be playing for in Dan Quinn, and the fourth different offensive coordinator, maybe the fifth. But he's all bought in already.
I think that's really started with Coach Quinn and the way he's really integrated everybody over the first 2 days. I think we haven't even gotten into X's and O's quite yet. We've just really begun to know one another, getting out there with Chad and the strength coaches and getting some good workouts in, just kind of creating fostering an environment where everybody's the same and continuing to have a competitive environment. I think that brings out the best in one another. And obviously, you have guys like Zach Ertz, who's played a lot of football and won a championship, Marcus Mariota, obviously Bobby Wagner, who's a future Hall of Famer. So you got some guys who have been brought in here who know what it's supposed to look like at this level. And for myself, I just want to continue to add my value and be even more vocal this year than I have in the past, especially with possibly a new quarterback coming in. I think that can really help our offense have some more unity with the guys who know what it looks like, helping bringing those guys, the younger guys, along.
And a vocal leadership. He's been a captain. It's kind of ironic the way he became captain. He came in the same draft class as Dwayne Haskins. They'd been teammates together at Ohio State. And in year 2, when Haskins started to have some issues off the field, including being photographed without a mask at a party at the height of the COVID mess, and so forth and so on, getting benched, getting dropped from first string to third string, it was McLaurin who replaced him as captain, and he's been captain ever since, one of the offensive captains ever since. And now he's, the way things move along in the NFL, he's a grizzled veteran. Guy gets drafted in 2019, 5 years ago, and now going into his 6th year. He is a guy that everybody looks up to, got a second contract. Not everybody gets a second contract in the NFL. He gets one, and has really a good perspective. When you listen to people who know how to lead, these are the kind of things that they say. And this is Terry McLaurin on being more of a vocal leader this year.
I've grown a lot in my vocal leadership. I think I try to always find the balance of when to say something, when not to say something. I think I've always wanted to be a person when I say something, it means something. Like, you don't want to be, you're giving all the motivational speeches, but you're not backing it up with your play, or you're talking so much, your message gets drowned out. And so it's kind of continue to find that balance of when to say things and when to kind of just take a step back. But I think I've gotten a really good feel of how to do that. I think obviously with a new coaching staff, you just try to understand how they want things done, and you try to, bring what you do well into that, and you also try to encourage the guys who haven't taken those steps in their career to do that as well. So I think for me, it's just really starting in my position group. I think we have still a very young group, kind of inexperienced for the most part, but I think we have a lot of talent in there, and it's just my job and Bobby's job and to continue to bring that group along as we go throughout this season.
That's Terry McLaurin, and he's just great. He's great on the field, great off the field, and somebody you'd obviously want to have in your organization. Coming up, baseball has had issues with substances before, whether it's been spit or pine tar. Don't think they've really had a sweat issue until now. Tony Kornheiser, Pablo Torre kicking that around next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, Tony's coming up at 11 o'clock. There is an update now on something I passed along earlier. I don't know how interested you are in the behind the scenes of ESPN, but I worked there, know many people who still work there, people who are friends, and this is a seismic move in the company. Norby Williamson, one of the top executives, been there 40 years, started in the mailroom, worked his way up to like the head of content, and butted heads with Pat McAfee to the point where McAfee called him a rat. It was reported by the New York Post today that Williamson was leaving. When this comes out and he leaves right away, that means he was either pushed or it reached the point of breaking. And there probably are some really juicy details behind the scenes. But Burke Magnus, who is like, I guess, above Norby, one of the top content president is his title. He says, I'm reaching out with some important news. Norby Williamson will be leaving the company today after nearly 40 years of dedicated service. Normally in a situation where a guy's been there for 40 years, there's an announcement he's going to retire at the end of the year or 6 months or even a month. Today indicates that there's some serious tension there. I don't know what's going on, but that has happened. Norby Williamson leaving ESPN after 40 years. All right, talk about the sweat in these Major League uniforms. If you're not up to speed on this, Nike is still making the uniforms, but Fanatics is the supplier. And I guess there's some kind of a disconnect or some change that has made these uniforms look very cheap. And now you get to see sweat when these players are on the road. You know, all these years of watching baseball and sometimes in 100-degree weather, you don't really notice the sweat. Well, they're still in April, and there's sweat stains on the uniforms. And this did not go unnoticed by Pablo Torre, who was sitting in for Mike Wilbon, and Tony Kornheiser last night on PTI.
The stains have particularly shown up in the road gray uniforms. And if players are getting sweat stains in early April, can you imagine what they'll look like in Kansas City in July? So Pablo's sweat stains, big deal, little deal, no deal.
This is a big deal, Tony, and I have to disclose, of course, I work with Dan Le Batard now, so I know what a sweat stain means and looks like. This stuff is Le Batardian. Yes. This stuff is how did you not notice this before? And so look, the parties to blame here are Nike foremost and Fanatics, right? So they're in some manufacturing dynamic, but Nike seems to be the one now answering the questions because it was their call in the end. So I want to address this from this perspective. This makes your game, your sport, look cheap. It makes it look like you don't know what you're doing. Tony, I come to this show and I wear a tie because you have told me that I need to look like an adult. If I showed up here with a Fanatics uniform covered in sweat, you'd say, why is this man here doing this job alongside the rest of the grown-ups?
Yes, I am so glad you mentioned Le Batard, because for people who don't understand this, by the second inning of a game in Miami in July, he would look like the Mississippi River. He would have to change jerseys between pitches. Now, there is also some complaint that the jersey, the color of the jersey does not match the color of the pants. But I would tell you it's possibly because they have sweated through these things so much that when they get out of the dryer, they are actually a different color. As we know, the players hated these uniforms from the moment they got them. They hated the small numbers. They hated the small names. They hated the lack of tailoring.
All of it.
You know, they hated the cheap feel. They hated all of these things. And now if they sweat like this, they're going to look like polka dots when they play. I love this story. I hope it persists the entire season. And I completely understand it. When Nike says, what is Nike's exact words?
Oh, it's great.
We're testing these uniforms. Here's how you should test them. By throwing them in the garbage. They're, as Wilbon would say, hocus pocus junk.
So the rest of that quote from Nike, I want to continue it, Tony, because they're not just testing these uniforms. They're testing, quote, different options to lessen, and this is a great euphemism, the moisture-related aesthetic color differences, end quote. I just want to know how many people got paid to come up with that sort of a spin job. It's sweat. It's gross. The aesthetic difference is that it looks insane that you agreed to wear this.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens as the season goes on. They can make new uniforms. Maybe they're working on them behind the scenes now. But this is what people are talking about in early April, the sweat stains on the uniforms. Go figure. It's an earthquake. If you've checked your Twitter or whatever, you've heard it. That 4.8 centered in New Jersey, felt in New York City. I think we had something like that about 15 years ago, and created a lot of damage to the National Cathedral. Took years and years and years to fix the damage. So it's a serious thing, and haven't heard anything about destruction or anything like that, but they say the earthquake was centered in Lebanon, New Jersey, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And they said that buildings were shaking from New Jersey to New York City to Connecticut. Wow. So, it used to be that was exclusive to California. Not anymore. Wow. How about this? Speaking of California, Shohei Ohtani hit his first home run for the Dodgers. Did it exactly 6 years after he hit his first home run in the major leagues with the Angels. And it was caught by Amber Roman, Amberroman. And she and her husband, Alexis Valenzuela, told The Athletic that they felt pressured and possibly swindled by team security and staff after they caught the ball. Ms. Roman claims that she and her husband were separated from one another by stadium staff after she caught the home run and were not allowed to communicate when she negotiated with the team over the price of returning the baseball. Roman also said the team threatened to refuse to authenticate the ball if she did not agree to a trade, which would cause the ball to lose its value, as there'd be no proof that it was the official baseball from Ohtani's first home run for the team. I don't know what a ball like that would sell for. I think the record is Mark McGwire's 70th, steroid-aided 70th, which sold for $3 million. The ball that Barry Bonds hit that broke the record for most home runs in a season, 73, that sold for over like $1 million, and there were two guys who battled it out in court for years over that. Anyway, the woman, Roman, and her husband were initially offered a pair of Dodgers hats signed by Ohtani, but she was able to negotiate up and get a signed bat and a ball, too. Well, that seems awfully low. An auction house told The Athletic the ball would be worth at least $100,000. And what they got from the team was like $1,000. And the husband said, I was just disappointed that a team I hold so dear pulled a quote-unquote quick one on us. Additionally, Ohtani told reporters, speaking through an interpreter, that he met with the fans and was able to get the baseball back. They never got to meet him, as they said. The couple maintained they don't regret giving the ball back. They were not pleased, though, with the treatment they received after catching the historic home run. That's crap. That's really crap. I thought the Dodgers were a better organization than that. And threatening something as underhanded and like that, not authenticating the ball? No, they should have had the right to sell it. I wonder how they could have worked around that. But they separated the two of them. Oh, here's a woman. We'll work her over. Keep the husband out of this. That doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right at all. Larry Lucchino passed away this week. We've read some of the obit the other day, and the credit that he gets for Camden Yards, and should. It was his vision. He wanted to make it like Forbes Field. But Tom Lavero's got some more details on Lucchino, who he knew. I know Tom kept up with Lucchino over the years. At one time, Tom was the beat reporter for the Orioles for the Washington Times and spent a lot of time around the team. And he writes, you want a measure of how small and petty the late Orioles owner Peter Angelos was? Larry Lucchino, the driving force behind Camden Yards, is not in the Orioles Hall of Fame. But Lucchino's legacy is so much more, to the point where those unaware of his accomplishments have stopped in their tracks this week and marveled, he did that? Camden Yards set off a wave of ballpark construction. Jacobs Field, Coors Field, PNC Park, the ballpark in Arlington, and others, all following the blueprint established in Baltimore. People claim that steroids saved baseball after the 1994 players' strike. It was bricks and mortar that saved the game, and Lucchino created it. It changed the economics of stadiums and teams much more than any of us understood at the time. Former baseball commissioner Bud Selig said it was huge. Yeah, Tom has always maintained this, that when people talk about the home run chase of 1998 saving the game, where you had the Sammy Sosa and McGuire battling neck and neck, and it was eventually McGuire that broke Roger Maris's record, that saved baseball. He says, no, that wasn't it. And even Cal Ripken, who gets a lot of credit for what he did in the chase in 95, and Ripken was great. I mean, he stayed hours after every game signing autographs that season. Tom says, no, it was the stadiums. It was all the new stadiums that were built about that time. Camden Yards opened in 92, Jacobs Field a year later, ballpark in Arlington, et cetera, et cetera. So he says, give credit for that. And the one who ignited all of that was Larry Lucchino. Tom says, I always thought Lucchino would wind up back here, either in Baltimore or Washington. He was excited about the news that both teams were on the market and talked about coming home, but ran out of energy and time. In between, when he left the Orioles, when Peter Angelos took over, he went to San Diego. That didn't work out, but it worked out fabulously well when he went to the Boston Red Sox, turned that around, got Theo Epstein hired there, broke the curse of 86 years and all that. And you probably heard this before, but he was a teammate of Bill Bradley's at Princeton, played on their Final Four team in 1965. He's got a watch from that, a Super Bowl ring from the Redskins' first Super Bowl championship in 83 when he was general counsel to the team, and also World Series rings from the Orioles in 83, the Red Sox in 04, 07, and 2013. So pretty good collection and a great run by Larry Lucchino, sadly passing away at the age of 78. And the last thing I want to mention, you'd think after Henry Ruggs that these players would know better, but this is just awful, and it's being handled in a way that I really haven't seen before. Rashee Rice, player for the Kansas City Chiefs, was the driver of one of the two speeding cars that caused a chain reaction crash in Dallas over the weekend. He left the scene of the crash, and his attorney, I don't know why he's revealing this, but he said that why Rice left the crash was, quote, a good question that's still being investigated. The attorney is State Senator Royce West. They expect charges to be filed against Rice driving a Lamborghini that got involved in a crash with a Corvette that he owned. 4 other vehicles left 4 people with minor injuries. The driver of the Corvette also left, without determining whether medical attention was needed. The Corvette belongs to Rice. No information released on the other driver. Rice posted on Instagram he was taking full responsibility for his part in the wreck. Interesting. The evidence must be overwhelming on this. Police have said the drivers of the Corvette and the Lamborghini were speeding in the far left lane when they lost control. The Lamborghini traveled onto the shoulder, hit the center median wall, causing a chain reaction. Rice was leasing the Lamborghini, and so they're looking into that. These guys have a lot of money, a lot of time on their hands, and when you do something like that after the Henry Rugg tragedy, had a great rookie year for the Raiders, driving a Corvette at, I believe, close to 150 miles an hour, rear-ended a car, killed a woman driving, and Henry Rugg is going to spend the next 3 years in jail. A lot of people thought he got a light sentence, but it will probably preclude him from playing pro football again. And we had another incident with Commanders players recently. You had Jaden Davis involved in a car incident. Stop. Use some common sense. If you want to learn how to drive a race car, go to a racetrack and learn. But this is just awful. It's just tragic that this happens. And the thing that surprises me is the legal strategy here, where you have him basically admitting guilt ahead of any kind of charges that are being filed. And I wonder if they're just looking for as much mercy as they can get. Andy Reid, his coach, he can look down on this, but his son spent some time in jail for a drunk driving accident. You'd think these people would know better, but they don't. They continue to make these stupid mistakes. All right, that's enough preaching for 1 week. Tony is coming up next. Enjoy the Final Four, and I will be back here at 9 a.m. on Monday morning.